The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan and completed by Brandon Sanderson is one of my favorite book series of all time. So I was very excited when I heard that Amazon Prime was going to produce a new show based on the books. And it is coming out this Friday, so I'm making just a quick video today. 5 reasons why you should watch Amazon Prime's adaptation of The Wheel of Time. Or read the books. Or both. But before we get into that, please give me a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and drop me a comment below. Especially if you are a Wheel of Time veteran, I would love for you to add to my top 5 list. I started making a list myself. When I stopped at 10, narrowed it down to 5, so there are probably 20, 30, 50, 100 reasons to watch this show or read these books. So I'd love to hear from you in the comments below here. All right, before I get started, just want to address the elephant in the room. Is this going to be the next Game of Thrones? I'm saying yes, even though I have not seen a single thing yet. I've only seen trailers, I've seen a little bit of content online. It looks great, but I think it's going to scratch that itch. But I'll be honest, I hate when they say, is this going to be the next Game of Thrones? Because the Wheel of Time book started before George R.R. Martin started writing the Game of Thrones books. But I will do a little bit of compare and contrast, reasons that I think this can be just as good as Game of Thrones for those of you that are looking to scratch that itch that Game of Thrones left you. All right, reason number 1, I'm going to address that elephant in the room right away, contrasting this with Game of Thrones. There's an ending, and it's fantastic. All of us know that watched Game of Thrones, we were pretty much universally disappointed in the ending of the series. In fact, we started to see cracks along the way when the producers got past the source material that George Martin had left them. Even if you believe the idea that he left them an outline, which I don't, because I've seen enough interviews with him that he says that he doesn't do outlines because he doesn't like to write twice. Even if you do believe that he left an outline for the producers, we all know that the quality of the late seasons of Game of Thrones wasn't as great when it didn't have the source material. Well, look up here. We have 15 books of source material for the Wheel of Time. The conclusion over here, A Memory of Light, is absolutely fantastic. Riveting, cathartic. I think I cried 4 times in the end of this book. Throughout the end of this book, it's such a great conclusion. Even though Brandon Sanderson finished the story, the last chapter was written by Jordan himself, and he left outlines for Sanderson to finish the series. So those of you that are a little worried, oh, I'm going to get invested in this great show and just be disappointed at the end, that's probably not going to happen with The Wheel of Time, because there's an ending and it's great. Reason number 2 to watch the show or read the books is the characters. Like most series and like most modern readers and television viewers, character is often what brings us back to a storyline. To cite one of the greatest television shows ever, The Sopranos, I didn't watch The Sopranos for the storyline. I watched it because I found Tony Soprano such an interesting and intriguing character. Same thing with Game of Thrones, although obviously you see I enjoy the fantasy genre. What I like most about Game of Thrones, both the books and the series, is the characters. You know, I love Tyrion Lannister and Arya and Daenerys and Jon Snow and the whole cast of characters. Well, The Wheel of Time may have greater characters than Game of Thrones did. I started sketching out a video a while back where I wanted to do a video of my favorite literary characters. It was a really tough list to compile, but when I started writing Wheel of Time characters, I had about 10 of them that kind of made the semifinals of that list. There are so many just interesting characters in this series that make it just compelling reading. And Jordan in the books is so great at the point of view character narrative, where you get in a character's head for an entire chapter. Many chapters, as they add up over all these books, just make you really love these characters and really understand what they're all about, what their motivations are. And Jordan is one of the ones that did such a great job at fleshing out these characters, making them feel real. A lot of times in fiction, especially in fantasy, more older fantasy than modern fantasy, you get a lot of characters that are frankly a little two-dimensional, or they're just very much a trope. But that is not the case with Wheel of Time. So if you love character-driven drama, I really recommend that. Of course, you read the books, but I imagine the series is just going to be just as focused, at least based on what we've seen from trailers and so forth. There's a big focus of the characters, and I'm so excited for that because these characters are characters that you will be compelled to watch from season 1 all the way to the end of this series. All right, reason number 3. I'm going to piggyback on number 2 and talk about character development and character arcs. Now, when I'm really trying to convince someone to read The Wheel of Time, I always drop this really bold statement at them, so I'll drop it on you now. The Wheel of Time has the greatest character development in literature. Done. And I believe that. Now, you could argue that 15 books, you have time to really develop character, and you do. So that is very true. It's a lot tougher for someone writing a single novel or even a trilogy of books to take a character arc and make it as grand as Robert Jordan did in these books. However, what impressed me most with his character development is how subtly he did it and with such finesse. It's truly a masterful job that he did in these books in showing a trajectory of all of these characters. Let me give you one example. I'm not going to name this character because if you read the books or watch the show, I want you to experience it. There's a character that I hated for at least half the series. At least until book 8 or 9, I could not stand this character. There were 2 scenes in the last book with this character that made me cry. Had you told me early in the series that a scene with this character made me cry, I would have said, oh, it must be tears of joy, they finally killed this person off, because I could not stand this character. But as Jordan just so artfully portrayed what this character was about, and you saw this character grow, and you saw the trajectory of this character's character arc, I ended up loving this character at the end, and I could not believe it, because it's just snuck up on me. And that's one of the strengths of this book series, is seeing these characters go through these arcs. Again, to parallel Game of Thrones, I think most people love the character arc of Jaime Lannister. Now imagine 6 character arcs that strong. You think of Jaime Lannister in the very first episode, he's pushing a little boy out of a window. By the end of the series, pretty much everybody loved this character because they saw his growth and they saw what he was really about and what he became. There are so many characters that go through such a journey in this book series that if you love that arc, you will love Wheel of Time. You will love where these characters go and what they become. And if you read it especially, hopefully the showrunners do as good a job as Jordan did, or even half a good a job as Jordan did. But Jordan does it with such finesse that it is just impressive, and it hits you like a ton of bricks when you realize that you love a character, or characters that you didn't realize you love them. Reason number 4, it'll feel familiar until it won't. So what does that mean? The Wheel of Time, the people that know fantasy genre usually say that The Wheel of Time is the book series that is the bridge between the classic style of fantasy, which is Tolkien and a whole lot of Tolkien clones and Tolkien-derived types of stories that happen for decades. And he's the bridge between that kind of fantasy and more modern fantasy. More modern fantasy generally has a greater focus on character, often fleshes out what magic means in a world, dealing with, harder magic systems and rules and things like that, and is a little less plot-focused and more character-focused in general. So Wheel of Time starts off like a classic fantasy tale. In many ways, I don't know if he said it or I've just heard a lot of people talk about it. In many ways, the first book, The Eye of the World, which is going to be the first season of Amazon's television show, The Eye of the World is kind of Robert Jordan's Fellowship of the Ring. And it starts off like a typical fantasy tale in a very small town. It's not Bag End, but it's a small town of Emmons Field, and we see these villagers, and as they journey out from the small village, we learn about the world with them. And it's a common fantasy trope that you see that. The easy kind of world building that starts small and then expands, and you learn about the world as the characters learn about the world. There are a lot of the typical fantasy tropes in there as well that you will see. Of course, you're going to have a chosen one, which won't be revealed right away. Even in the book, you kind of understand who it is, but you're not sure. But in the series, I think they're probably going to play up that drama a little longer, which I think is great. But there's a chosen one trope. There's an old wizened wizard trope. There is the stoic warrior protector trope. There's the dark one trope, but all of them start to change in a very different way. For instance, the old wizened wizard trope is a beautiful woman, portrayed by Rosamund Pike. And Jordan just pays his homage to classic fantasy in the first book and probably the first season of the series, and then he goes a very different direction. And it was so interesting to see where he takes the story, what his focus of the story becomes, and where it eventually goes. But it's a big focus on character, which I guess piggybacks on my last two, but that's one of the greatest things about the Wheel of Time is the character. But this will start and it'll feel familiar, and then it's going to go a very different direction, and that is so, so interesting. Number 5, somewhat spoilery, but I could not leave the Aiel off of this list. So who are the Aiel? We may not even see them in season 1. That's why you need to start watching so that we get further seasons, because the Aiel is the most interesting and unique culture that's created that I've ever read in any genre. I rambled here a little bit, so I want to be a little more succinct on this point, in that a lot of times in a fantasy story, it's very easy to see where a new culture is derived from. So you can see if it is a horse culture, oh, this must be the Cherokee of this world, or this is the samurai of this world. But with the Aiel, Jordan does such a great job at drawing from so many different kinds of cultures and making it its own, that it is such a unique and such an interesting culture. Although you could probably sit and analyze all of the different areas that Jordan drew upon to create this culture, it's wholly its own, and it is so interesting, and I love the Aiel. Except for one plot thread that went a little further in the series, everything with the Aiel was some of the most fascinating stuff for me. I did see one Aiel in the trailer, so I'm hopeful that we see a little bit of them in the first series, the first season. But I know that in further seasons they become more and more important, and they are just frankly the most interesting cultural creation I've ever encountered in any kind of literature. So that is my top 5. I hope I gave you somewhat a good sell job, because I do want this series to be successful, because I can't wait to see one of my favorite book series on the screen. I loved Peter Jackson's portrayal of The Lord of the Rings. That is my favorite book series, and Wheel of Time is probably number 2. So I'm very excited for this series. I hope it's good. This is a reason why I think you should watch and read the books, or one or the other, or both. I don't know if it's good yet. I hope it is. So if the series sucks, we'll just forget about it and use this to go read the books, because these books are fantastic, and there's a reason that they sold 90 million copies worldwide, and that the last 8 of them, I think, were number 1 on the New York Times bestseller list. But hey, if you are a Wheel of Time veteran, I'd love to hear in the comments below what you would include for a reason to watch this show. I just gave you 5. I could have given you 10, maybe even 20 reasons why I think you should watch the show or read the books. And I'm really excited to hear what some other Wheel of Time veterans would say to that. But if you've liked this video, please give me a like, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. I also do one-sentence book reviews on Twitter. That's been a lot of fun this year. And then if you want to see more of what I'm reading with more in-depth reviews, I have my Goodreads profile down there as well. But I like Goodreads a lot, only because I get to see what you're reading as well. So please add me on those platforms. As always, thank you for watching. Until next time, goodbye.